Good morning, good afternoon, everyone in the world. 20 minutes late, here we are. I'm Paul.
Hi, I'm Paul.
Welcome to Better Call Paul's. Boy, we got to have a conversation tonight. Um, you know, I think one of the more telling lessons, Paul, that I've ever had in my experience online was that getting laid is an art. I mean, it's sort of like like a Picasso, a Rembrandt. It's like, who would have believed that you could go to somewhere like Ruch's Forum as a pimply-faced kid that couldn't even say hello to a girl with no confidence, and by the time you come out of there, you'll be beating cheerleaders off with a stick. I don't know how they do it, but it's called PUA, pickup artistry. They do fancy themselves artistes. I want to make one thing clear before we launch into this discussion for this cesspool of a talk, if you will. I am not down at all on the young men in this modern age who feel insecure, who are looking for social acceptance, looking for a place to fit, looking to be more attractive to women. I don't see anything in the world wrong with that. However, as you look into the PUA community of what's really going on in there, what you get is what I think we put in the description of this program tonight, is that you have a small handful of hucksters playing on the insecurities and loneliness of young men and playing it up for the cha-ching. And it's working quite well. There's a whole lot of insecure young men in this culture, and who else would expect otherwise with so many fatherless kids in this world, that they grow up raised by single mothers. They go to schools that are predominantly staffed by women, and they come out of all that seeking women's approval in a sometimes unhealthy way. Paul, what do you think of this whole deal?
Yeah, I think there is. I think there's some truth in their madness. My problem is like you say, is the way they go about it, the industry behind it. It's very exploitative. It's like Zig Ziglar or Anthony Robbins. It's that kind of Amway shit where you pay thousands of dollars to these guys, and it looks like the biggest graduation is to kind of become one of them, become one of the inner circle, and it's almost like pyramid sales. And I think you're right that there are a lot of guys out there with social problems, or they're anxious, or they're not comfortable around women. But I think just to paper over the top of that and say, oh, if you do Keno and Neg and all this sort of shit, you're not really looking at the real problem in the person. I think they're going about it arse about face. They're saying, if you get laid, you'll be happy. Whereas I would say, well, if you get happy, you're probably going to get laid as a byproduct.
Well, imagine that. If you already carry a sense of security and inner happiness that doesn't leave you being needy and obsessed with strategies and techniques to score, then I can't imagine why the idea doesn't resonate so well to go get laid first. If you get a girl to say yes, you'll feel good about yourself. And you know what? You're right. There is a little bit of truth in that. I mean, who doesn't feel better after getting laid? My problem with all this is the gynocentrism, and not just gynocentrism on its own account, but gynocentrism to the point that self-respect and I don't like the word self-esteem, I prefer self-respect, but self-value, self-respect are measured or accessed or denied based on whether or not a woman opens her legs. And that is just a little bit crazy, in my opinion. One, if you have real self-respect, it's not ever in somebody else's hands, no matter what. You could be rejected by 1 million women, and if you try hard enough, you will get rejected by lots of them. But if you have self-respect, nobody's taking it away from you. And that's what I see. I read through, and I'm with you on the graduation thing. I think the people that graduate in Ruch forums ought to be given their own plaid jacket bow tie and cigar, that they too can go out and sell used cars for a living. This is like base instinct in men. This is what men want. They want sex. We know that. Young men, in particularly when the hormones are at their peak, are going after it. They obsess on it. They think about it all the time. And I think that's where these vultures dive in like hawks and zero in, because no young man, or very, very few, ever gets laid anywhere near the amount he wants to. Many young men don't get laid at all. And instead of teaching them how to navigate all that, keeping their own respect intact, their self-respect, and attending to their own happiness, they say, here you go. If you can go over there and convince that girl to go out with you or to give you a kiss or a blowjob or go to bed with you, then that will address the issues in your life. And that is some really sick bullshit to be selling people.
Yeah, I think the whole premise of, you know, value, demonstrating high value and bringing someone else's value down. It's why is that the status quo, that the man is kind of naturally low value and has to do tricks and juggle and wear stupid hats and say stupid shit to prove that they are of high value? When, I mean, my own philosophy is women need men like junkies need heroin. It's a wrong approach to think that you are always, it's almost like you're begging for pussy, I think, when you're following their approaches. And just when you're talking about esteem, things like shit tests, which I'm not denying women do that, but, you know, I think more of a reasonable approach with a shit test is just tell them to fuck off and find another one. I mean, it's not like it's a desert of vagina in the world. There's heaps. You don't have to lower yourself and play with these games and put up with these things just to get, you know, some sort of validation that you're worthwhile, when you should be thinking you're fucking worthwhile already.
Yeah, that's the part that gets me, Paul. And I ought to tell you a story. This is happened a long time ago, but it is really indicative, I think, not just of the problem in what these men are reacting to, but in the actual mechanics of how the inner workings of women's minds. I was walking my dog on near a marina, walking along the docks there, and a sailboat came in, I guess maybe 50, 60 yards out from me, came in, had a crew of really nice looking women on it. And there was a group of other guys getting off of another boat standing on the dock. And when they started pulling into their slip, those guys ran over there and were like, can I get that rope for you? Can I do this? Can I do that? Can I? Let me see what I can do for you. And I just stood there and watched that. And this was, luckily for me, I mean, it was quite a while ago, but it was after Red Pill days. And I just called over to him. I said, hey, if I throw you a beach ball, will you balance it on your nose for him and clap? And of course, I got some dirty looks, but two of the women on there, on that boat, looked at me and smiled from ear to ear. And I ended up getting more attention than those guys did. Women don't like that stuff. As a rule, they don't like obsequious, and contrary to what you're going to hear from a lot of places in the PUA sphere, as I like to call it, women do see through that stuff. They do. I mean, I would like to, I'm not even going to mention his name because I'm not going to drag him into this argument, but I know somebody that was involved from way back in the old days in the very big emergence of the PUA communities online. And this is a guy that I can guarantee you gets laid all that he wants to. He's relatively young, super good looking, works out like crazy, super intelligent, and makes good money. So you know he has women pretty much at his disposal. And his experience after years of studying that stuff and dealing with it was that guys were no better coming out of it than they were going into it. That it was all about what was internal in them to begin with, and that there wasn't any techniques they could like do things like get themselves physically fit and other things that you can do to help enhance your chances with women. But the internal psychology, you don't beat with strategy. If you think you're worthless and that no woman wants you, you're not going to convince women otherwise by having a cute line or the right come on or the right attitude of indifference or anything else. They're going to see right through that shit. And so you guys, sorry, I feel for you, but if you're spending money on getting laid coaching, my guess is it's wasted.
Yeah, I think you touched on something there, Paul. It's kind of if you have an anxiety or you have a problem talking to women, I've spoken to quite a lot of guys about this actually. It stems from, well, what they're not going to think I'm attractive. They're not going to think that I'm someone that's worth having sex with. And really, because you can never ever know what someone else is thinking, I'd say in a lot of cases that's a projection, and what they're really saying is there's something about me, there's something about myself that I'm not happy with. And so if you don't tackle that, and the ways you can tackle it, the ways you mentioned there, you know, like become fit, develop an interest, you know, form a social circle, social bond with men, or find an interest.
An interest other than pussy.
Yeah. Pussy's
okay.
Like, no, it's it's not the be all and end all, for fuck's sake. But there are ways to treat that with someone, you know, to encourage them to do things, and bit by bit they form a core of their selves. They give themselves their own meaning for their own personal life. And you can't shortcut that. You just can't. There's no quick fix. There's no silver bullet. There's no book you can read about this. And I think a lot of young guys, I think this. I mean, I'll draw on the stupid evidence that there was no pickup when I was a young slip of a lad in the late 80s, early 90s, because I think men and women were more socialized. We had less day-to-day adult intervention in our lives when we were children, so we grew up as peers. We worked out what worked, what didn't, and so there's some bullies and some not bullies, and but kids kind of sort that shit out a lot for themselves. And so when you get to adulthood, I think there's a lot of guys that have not quite formed socially, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. I don't mean to put guys down for that, because you can catch up. You can catch up with these things. But I think some of what game is trying to mechanically induce, it's kind of robotic empathy. You know, it's touch here, it's escalate physically, it's look for signs of attraction and things like this. Whereas if you've got any empathy and you're socialized, you can, not 100%, but you can generally pick up on these things. You know if something's on or something's not. You don't need a rule book for that.
Yeah, Paul, let me interrupt for a second. I think we better switch to off camera. Your sound is breaking up pretty badly, and I think if we cut down on the bandwidth just by going to audio, that might help some. So let's try cutting the cameras and see if that helps. Okay, we'll give it a try from there. You want to pick up on the end of what you were just saying?
Where did you hear me up to? I was going on a whirlwind of genius there, Paul.
Oh, wow. Well, Google just screwed you out of it, brother. The sound is still a little bit wonky, but we'll keep trying for a little while here to see if we can get this to work out. Okay. One of the things I was going to follow up with was that the concern that I have about what I'll call victims of PUA ideology is that they talk a lot about getting women and almost nothing about whether or not you should get some women. Some of these, I mean, if you just go after anything in genes and your only criteria is whether or not she's got nice tits, whether or not you want to fuck her, if that's your sole and only criteria, I want to say welcome to the guys that end up at the other end of false accusations, that end up with borderline girlfriends. Because let's face it, man, if you're playing games to start up something with a woman, you're going to get a woman that responds to games. It's like the guy that goes out and buys the new Corvette so he can attract more women. Well, he sure enough attracts more women.
Oh, watch it, Paul. Paul, I've got a 1968 Corvette, so go easy there, mate.
Oh, but no, I was talking only about new ones. Now, man, if you got a 68, wow, 68, man, I want your car, and you can have mine. But seriously, these guys, it is like getting something artificial to attract. And as I am fond of saying, if you fish with stink bait, you catch bottom feeders. And that's what exactly men do with these techniques, if they get laid at all. And I am seriously doubtful that there's much of anything to the PUA ideology. Anyway, there's some useful stuff in there. Like you said, shit test, yeah. My idea of shit tests is that you're supposed to fail them. If these guys are actually treating themselves like they're at a job interview, trying to put on their best behavior in order to be accepted by a prospective employer, instead of being a self-employed entrepreneur, which is going to attract about 3 to 5 times more women. I don't get it. I guess it is just the insecurities at play, and I think people like Roosh know this all too well, and they get in and they dig through it, help create the sense of failure. Because what you also notice about a lot of these guys, when they write articles about the men's movement, what do? They attack our masculinity. They play the real man game and attack who we are in order to move themselves up theoretically on the into the upper echelons of manhood on the backs of other men. That's a pretty chicken shit way of operating, and it sort of reveals what they're about to me.
Yeah, did you hear what I was saying about childhood and socialization? Did that?
No, but you're coming through clearly, and I think you probably ought to say it again, because if I didn't hear it, I don't think the listeners heard it.
Okay, so I'm drawing a couple of dots here, but I'm thinking that, there was no such thing as that I knew of of PUA when I was younger, like in the late 80s and early 90s, and I think that there wasn't a need for it because men and women were more socialized. We had much more opportunity then to grow up, learning mistakes from our own peers from a very young age, without helicopter parenting, without all this shit that gets in the way of natural development. I mean, it's a natural thing for kids to work out at their own level what works and what doesn't work in life. And so I think by the time, and I'll just talk about guys here, but it applies to women, and I don't mean to be disrespectful or put guys down who suffer from these problems, but I think there are a few guys out there that have not had as much socialization, and I think one of the byproducts of that is the empathy detector or empathy skill is a little bit out sometimes. And so when you look at PUAs and they talk about things like looking for signs of interest, do this, do that to build up interest. If you have a bit of empathy in you, you don't need this rote learning. You're not always 100% right, but you can kind of tell if something's going to be happening or something's not going to be happening. And I think the benchmark of PUA success is also quite low, which is, getting a phone number. I mean, that doesn't mean fucking shit, getting a phone number. I think what it comes down to is it's a combination of guys being insecure in the first place and not being able to accept rejection. It's a fact of life that if you go out and you chat to girls, it doesn't matter who you are, you're going to get rejected. And the best thing that you can have in your armory is just not to give a fuck about that.
It's interesting. The one bit of wisdom, Paul, that I heard ever that I thought was real wisdom out of a PUA was something I saw in a video online a long time ago. And the guy said, the difference that makes the difference is indifference. And it's true. It does make a difference. But indifference is not really something faked very easily. And indifference comes from self-assuredness. Now, here we have another entirely big problem that I think that the PUA gurus are worsening rather than making better. We have young men now, so many of them without fathers in the home. They're raised by single mothers who often are alienating mothers, who can't stand the father, who do everything they can to undermine that relationship, and they can always succeed at it because nobody can stop an alienating mother if that's what she wants to do. It just can't be prevented. And so they grow up with this becoming through emotional incest of the mother. She turns the son into the emotional husband in many ways and makes him accountable for her emotional well-being. So he's already got one big strike against him, is that he's raised in an environment where he knows he better please that woman, and the moment he doesn't please her, then his whole world can come tumbling in around him, and he's got no backup.
You're just like your father.
Yep, you're just like your father, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, she said the father's a scumbag for the boy's whole life. So, what does that say to him? And so he learns to try to please her. And he's spent his whole young life trying to please his mother. And then he goes into a school system that's predominantly women. And and these are women that are single, divorced, alienating mothers frequently, feminists that are totally lopsided in their treatment of girls versus boys, and he gets more of the same at school as he did at home. Well, no wonder he ends up finding appeal when he stumbles into a PUA forum and all these guys are talking about their exploits of conquering women and putting notches on their belt. That's going to appeal in some sense, I think, to a sense of revenge in him. Because you don't raise boys this way without instilling a great deal of resentment, particularly toward women. People want to know where misogyny comes from. Well, they are made. They're not born misogynists. And we turn men into misogynists. And then, of course, when you go into any PUA forum, what you see is what you talked about, Paul, is that empathy is not a developed skill in a lot of these young men. And I'm not taking a feminist line to say that they objectify women, but what I will say is that it appears to be a connection to women that is somewhat less than human. And of course, that's ultimately going to be unsatisfying. I don't care, send me all the hate mail you want. Human beings are pair bonding creatures. They are generally most adjusted and most happy with social and romantic fulfillment. Like it or not, that's the truth. Anybody wants, like I said, you want to send hate mail, unsub from my channel, withdraw your donations, do whatever you want to do. The fact of the matter is that human beings need each other. Heterosexual men and women need each other. Gay men and women need each other. That is the nature of the human species. The very few people were made to fly solo in life. And I don't think PUA is the way to get there. It may be a great temporary reprieve from all the misandry in the world and from the bullshit that your mom raised you with and that your teachers gave you growing up. But ultimately, a mature human being is going to long for a connection that is something more than a place to stick your dick. Am I wrong?
Yeah, well, look, as far as I agree with everything you're saying there. Maybe the pair bonding thing, I think it's kind of a nice, perfect world thing, and I think unfortunately, it's not a perfect world at the moment. And I think if you're talking about relationships or long-term relationships or whatever, I think that can be very, very dodgy territory for guys. Like I said, I don't think PUA is the way that you're going to find that anyway, because you're right. If you're going to play tricks and be inauthentic, you're going to end up with a fucking bunny boiler. That's the only thing you get. So that's not long-term material for a start. But I don't know if I think it's possible for men more than women to be happier on their own. I think if again, that comes from building up your own self-esteem and your own self-worth. I think if you, I'm trying to disagree with you, but I see what you're saying, Paul. But I think if
Oh
your
no, we
idea,
don't allow disagreement around here.
yeah, I think that as far as pair bonding goes, I think that, you know, to do it's like a bit like winning the lottery. It's banking on that, and I think that relying on other things in your life for happiness doesn't mean you're going to have an unfulfilled life by any stretch. And
Oh
I
no,
think if
I'll
a
agree
guy,
with that.
yeah, I think if all a guy wants to do is get laid once in a while and he's fulfilled and he's happy with that, I think that's entirely possible.
Oh yeah, and I also I should qualify what I say too. When I say pair bonding, I don't necessarily even mean for life. Um,
Oh,
uh,
okay, right.
uh,
I
it, it,
thought you were going penguin on me there, Paul.
oh no, no, absolutely not. I think it's obvious in today's culture that you know, happily ever after sort of went the way of John Wayne,
Yep.
and people are having to adjust. The human species, I think, having to adjust to the idea that by nature we're perhaps not even monogamous creatures, but that doesn't mean we don't pair bond. We just, I think, tend to do it over shorter periods of time than we did
Okay.
50 to 100 years ago. Um, there's nothing wrong with a good, you know, 2 or 3 year relationship. You get what you can out of it and you move on, and there's grief at the end, but there's also hopefully some good things that came out of it. I just don't think that initiating relationships with bullshit. I mean, the fact that you're trying to figure out hookup lines is
Oh,
proof
for
that
fuck's
you want to be with somebody.
it's just the most absurd shit I've seen, these corny lines that the only women that are going to go for shit like that are mental retards. I don't care what fucking PUA say about anything. If you can't naturally just talk funny, confident shit with a woman, then no line is going to help you, because when the line runs out, or you've run out of lines, or you've gone around every woman in the bar and you've used the same, doesn't work, then you go back to your PUA headquarters and they'll say, well, maybe you didn't do this and you didn't keno and you didn't fucking expression of interest or whatever the fuck they talk about. You know, they blame the guys for it when it's not. No, you shouldn't be relying on stupid pickup lines in the first place. It's dumb, so dumb. It's the forums. It's probably, you know, it's pretty disheartening for a guy with issues. And I say issues, that's a strong term. I don't mean it to sound so strong, but guys who are after a bit more success, they go to these forums and all they see are people full of shit saying how many fucking Los Angeles tens they've been betting every week. And, you know, life is, for most people, life is not like that.
Oh, yeah. But it sure is appealing when you're 21 and your hormones are raging and you've got, you know, however many dollars to part with, thinking that reading somebody's book or taking their course or getting their online coaching services is going to score you that movie star or cheerleader.
I just want to ask you a question here, Paul, because you said something there that's just sparked off a thought. You mentioned the age of 21, and I'd agree with that. It seems to be guys in their early 20s now. Years ago, all this dumb shit and hormones and strong emotion, I would suggest happened earlier, happened in teenage years. By the time 21 came along, okay, you don't know everything about the world and you're still a bit of a dick, and that's okay, but you have a lot more savvy sense about you. Do you think there's something that's causing like a late development in kind of sexuality for guys?
I think that fatherlessness is a huge factor in the emotional and psychological, every form of development we can think of, every psychosocial measure that we can think of. We know that the absence of fathers has a huge impact on it. And the absence of a father leaves a big gaping hole. I mean, it's one that young people often try to fill with drugs, or they try to fill with a lot of unhealthy things. And then, so it doesn't surprise me that sex may be something that comes up in the early 20s as a potential to fill a hole that's still there. And again, it's a fuzzy line we're talking about here, because the urge for sex is normal. You're supposed to be sex obsessed when you're 21.
That's why there's 7 billion people in the world.
I'm sorry?
That's why there's 7 billion people in the world. It's normal.
And why if it were any other way, there would be 0 people in the world, because we would have never made it as a species if we weren't obsessed with sex. But I think part of, I know this is an older guy talking too. It may not make jack shit for sense to somebody that's in their 20s. But part of our humanity is rising above instinct. I mean, my instinct tells me that if I'm hungry and you got a cheeseburger, I'm supposed to knock you on the head with a rock and take it. But we do evolve past our instincts to some level to operate on a higher plane than just what our genetics tell us to do every day: suck air, eat, sleep. If that's all there was to life, then what's the point in living all these years? But yeah, I think it's a big gray line. There are humongous developmental issues, I think, in the people that are attracted to PUA philosophy. And I don't mean that, just like you said, I don't mean that as an insult. I think that these are young men that have been slighted by life in a lot of ways. I think they've been slighted by their mothers. They've been slighted by family courts, and they have been shit on by the society that they live in. So a part of me says, you know, why shouldn't they just turn women into pieces of meat and get a chance to jump their bones and pump and dump and go their own way? Unfortunately, though, as anybody, and I will say this with absolute certainty, as anybody who has ever enjoyed a lot of success with women, you will find that by the time you've had sex with 30 or 40 of them, that it's pretty empty. That's an inevitable point in your life. I don't know. I mean, it was that way for me, that there came a point. I went on a sexual rampage after I was divorced. And I mean, I'd be embarrassed to say how many women I fucked. And at a point for me, it became tiresome. It was work, one, to even deal with them, because every woman brings her own drama with her. But I ended up saying, you know what, compared to two things, I've had a life of being with one person, and I've had a life of having just multiple partners and all kinds of crazy shit. And in the end, I found life with one person a lot less complicated, more peaceful, and more enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm still younger than you, Paul. I mean, now the camera's off. You know, I've been loved, but you know, I look like Brad Pitt. I've been with millions of women. So, you know. Well, one thing I find interesting, and I think this is, you know, if they're looking after men's best interests, I don't think this is a good way of doing it. And it's almost obsession is maybe too strong, but they're, you know, one of the big things they talk about is the alpha and beta males. And I get what they're saying, but it's a bit of pseudoscience gobbledygook, because, you know, we're not monkeys. You know, apes and alpha and beta was, you know, it's determined mainly on genetics and size and strength, things like that. And they've tried to a large extent, bring that across to a psychological state of being beta or alpha. What do you think about the whole alpha beta kind of thing?
I think it's I love the alphabet. You can make all kinds of nice words with it, like alpha and beta and other pseudoscientific bullshit. That's one of the other things about PUA and game that I find just absolutely insane. I look at it this way: it's complete bullshit pseudoscience. They're talking shit that has no place in a logical, empirical conversation. For instance, what you see in a lot of the PUA community, a lot of the game community, the same deal, is this absolute biological determinism that this is the way women are. They're all ultra hypergamous. This is what's going to end up. You see this in the MGTOW community too. A lot of total and complete biological determinism, except if biological determinism was absolute, who the fuck would be there talking about breaking away from the mold and doing something different?
Yeah.
It makes no sense at all. If we were governed solely by biological determinism, there would be no MGTOW, there would be no PUA, there would be no gamers. None. And when I say game, I'm talking about pickup game and marriage game, not video games. So I got somebody confused on that last time. But biological determinism is the biggest fallacy running this show in all those communities. And the hypocrisy of it is they say that here's how women are, period. And then they say, but I took this red pill and now I'm different. You can't have it both ways, guys.
Yeah, I see what you're saying now. I think a lot of women are the same though, unfortunately. But okay, in the same as what they want, and what they want is ultimately to breed, I think, and that requires resources. But there are grey areas, and nothing is set in stone. And I think, you know, again, it comes down to empathy. If you can see that's the way it's going, which you can tell fucking early on, like 1 or 2 dates I'm talking about here. If you sense that that's on the cards, then get the hell out. If it's not what you want, you know, I see some like YouTube videos of PUA artists, and they just don't. There's something inauthentic about them. There's this thing called the uncanny valley, which there's this a Japanese psychologist. He was a robotic engineer. Came up with this idea, and you can tell it when you look at things in CGI in the cinema, where they get to a point where they almost look human, and when they almost look human, they're absolutely repulsive. There's something repellent about them, and that's what it appears to some of these guys. It's like they're CGI guys. They're just not quite. They're not quite the full deal. You know, they're not showing all their insecurities if they have any, but they're not. I don't know. They're not fully developed as human beings. And I just look at them, you know, because, you know, I get past things. Hey, look at this guy. This is great. And I look at it and I think, nah, you can't fall for that shit. It's just not. It's not fucking right.
That's an interesting observation. I think you may have just coined a term there. You may be well hated for it before it's over with, but I like CGI guys because it's exactly what I'm reminded of. I mean, even the very premise, I mean, I think about this sometimes and it just baffles me. One, we live in an age where, you know, look, there's some guys that are just not going to get laid. It's either because they're really, really physically unattractive. I'm not making fun of these guys, but there are guys who are just not born to be very successful with women. There's guys on the borderline that, with some self-respect and a little bit of knowledge, can fare okay with women, and there's guys that can't keep women away from them. But the fact of the matter is, we live in an age where pussy is about as common as water. They're giving it away everywhere. I mean, what kind of artist do you have to be in 2015 to get laid?
Exactly. It's well, again, you know, that could be an age thing again, Paul, because I think young guys, particularly when you know, they're in your wonderful United States higher education system and they get told that they're being creepy and things like that, I could imagine how you know, more than a reasonable sample size of guys would internalize that. Or they're told how to behave as soon as they arrive on campus, you know, and they have to be lectured on what consent is. Again, this is all, you know, for me, to empathy and how we relate to each other as human beings. And when you have to have a fucking seminar or a presentation on what is consent and what it isn't, well, what does that say about humanity? And yeah, the feminists have got a huge part to play in that, but guys have let this happen. Instead of guys saying, what the hell? In fact, whenever a guy does protest and say, well, actually, I'm not a rapist, I'm not going, it's big news. It's like the exception. When it should be the norm.
That's so sad. Oh my God, that's
Isn't
sad.
it? It should be the norm that guys know they're not fucking rapists. Women know that most guys aren't fucking rapists. And, you know, just figure it out without rules and regulation or without authority. It's like an authority comes in. So the authority starts at an early age. No bullying, blah, blah, blah. And then you get to school, no bullying. No, you get to college, they're still talking about bullying at college. And then in the workplace, are you fucking for real? Adults bullying each other? Come on, you know. And I think that you know, so the PUA market absolutely thrives on this, because instead of guys figuring out that the only way or one way to, if they really want to become successful with women, is to get socialized. Forget women. You've got to get your own shit together. You've got to get your own house in order. Now that means not sitting around in your house thinking I'm lonely. You've got to make the effort and get out. You know, you aren't going to have a barrel of friends knocking on your door for no reason. You have to go out there, and maybe some of it might appear contrived. You have to do things like figure out what interests you in your life, and it could be the most stupid thing you like, and it could be something that there's no women there. You know, one of my personal interests is board games. Now, you don't get many chicks playing board games, but it's a social activity. It could be a car show. It could be, I don't know, fucking flower arranging, but getting out and mixing with people, understanding people, seeing, you know, they're the good things you start internalizing. What does emotion look like? All this sort of stuff. When you've got all that shit together, when you've got your own brain functioning, when you're doing something like meditation to clear all the crap out, then start going out and looking for a bit of tail.
And you probably won't have to look that hard. It'll probably come to you.
You won't have to look. You won't have to look that hard. And I tell you, women are absolutely repulsed. They can smell fear. They can smell fear, and they can smell insecurity. And unless I'm talking generally here, there might be a couple of outliers. But if you're genuinely insecure and you're faking it, they can smell that fucking mile off. If you don't have that, if you're secure in yourself and you don't give a shit, that is much more appealing to women. They will come to you.
And that's absolutely true. You know, I'll go back again and talk for a moment, Paul, about the period after my divorce. If you can imagine, after a divorce that was somewhat acrimonious, I didn't have to work too hard at pretending I didn't give a fuck about women.
I'm with you, brother.
It came real natural. And what was interesting was that during that time, I just treated women like other guys. I didn't change the way I talked. I didn't change my attitude. If I had to go somewhere, and I would go, and it didn't matter if a woman was trying to get my attention or not, I just left. I would talk to them straight up and square as human beings first, and think about women, them being women second. And that ended up opening the door to more sex than I ever dreamed was possible. But it was because I was taking care of my own business and myself. One thing I got out of a marriage and a divorce was that, I mean, I'm not going to go into too many details, but suffice it to say that, like a lot of men in my marriage, I didn't take very good care of myself. I didn't take care of my own interest. I didn't take care of even my own material needs very well at all. And the first thing that I got in my mind when I got divorced was that shit ends today.
Absolutely.
I started taking care of myself and myself only. I didn't care about anybody else's interests. Even when I started quote unquote dating again, I put it on the table with women that, you know, I'm not old school. I'm a new guy. That means if you're interested in spending time with me, then you're going to have to bring your purse with you. Because if I had 10 million bucks in the bank, I wouldn't finance a relationship. And that didn't stop me from getting laid. So there is something more to that whole interactive experience with women. And what I found a lot of times was there were women that liked that. They said,
absolutely.
okay.
It's my marriage split up nearly 7 years ago. It took me 2 days, Paul, 2 days to find the comfort of another lady. It wasn't that hard. But I think what we're talking about here, that's important there. Authenticity. And if you have to modify your behavior when you're in the company of women, then you're going about it wrong, Buster. You really, really are. Because by doing that, you are in fact lowering your self-esteem. In some way, you are saying that the way I normally behave is not good enough for this woman that I'm putting on a pedestal. I have to change what I say. I have to change the way I dress. I have to wear a stupid hat and goggles and a feather boa and fucking shit like that. I have to modify myself that much just to get laid. It's absolutely ridiculous. If the way you naturally are isn't cutting it, then you probably know that already, you know. And again, I'd say it's a socialization. There might be some anxiety or something there, but I think the more guy, you know, and this is a cliche, and this is what girls say all the time, is just be yourself. No, it's not just be yourself. It's improve yourself. Just being you isn't good enough. And that's not this. I'm not talking about for anyone else. I'm talking about for you. Just being you and being complacent in your life is not good enough for you. You'd be much more fulfilled if you work on what makes you happy. Get healthy, get fit, that kind of thing. Be successful. Whether you manage success by money or not is another thing. But you feel good about yourself. When you go out, you don't have to modify your behavior. And you're quite right, Paul. You can be pretty blunt sometimes with your situation in life, and it doesn't turn everyone off.
No, it doesn't. Matter of fact, it ran off the horse very quickly. Anybody that was interested in what I could buy for them lost interest in me in a very short order. And that, of course, is a very wonderful thing to have going in your life. Because if you start out with the understanding with a woman that you're there, that the motives for each other being there are obvious and on the table. If I'm not paying, that removes a question from my mind about why a woman is there. And it also should help the woman. I mean, I've heard, how many women have you heard in your life complain is that just because he bought me dinner doesn't mean I owe him sex? Well, you're absolutely fucking right. And the way that you prevent that situation from happening again is to pay for your own fucking dinner.
That's exactly it. Something else has just crossed my mind. So when I came back into the normal world, I think my underlying assumption, my mental model was that, okay, I'm a 36-year-old guy. There's bound to be loads of women around that age or a bit younger that just want to have sex too. I didn't think it was I didn't think that men did that more than women necessarily, or you have to trick women. I just thought, well, there's probably a few women out there that have been through shit or a divorce as well. They probably just want to get laid as well. And that's the attitude I had, and it was fine.
Yep.
It wasn't something special, I think. You know, it wasn't something special. I didn't have to read a book to do it, because it was like, you know, I was hungry, so I made myself a sandwich kind of thing.
Yep. I mean, I don't think there's any arguing it, Paul. It's going to boil down to the same story every time. The first step in sexual success with women is to quit giving a fuck about it.
Yep.
Focusing on yourself, realizing that no matter who you are, what your beliefs are, there's somebody out there that's going to find that okay. And even if they don't, I mean, just like Paul said, it doesn't matter. In the end, if you find it okay, it's the only thing that matters. And you're being okay with yourself really and fully and completely is one of the best attractors for women there is. It's almost counterintuitive, but that's the way it works.
Just something else that's crossed my mind, Paul, here is the way PUAs talk a lot about wingmen. And as far as I was concerned, if I was out with friends of mine, male friends of mine, I was out with my male friends. That was what we did. That was the important thing. We went out and we had a laugh together. Friendship, bonded. We never chased tail when we were out together. If I wanted to score, I would go out on my own. I would just go out, I'd go to a hotel lobby bar or something and just do it that way. But this on PUAs to kind of turn your male friends just into wingmen. I don't know. You're missing out on a lot there, you know?
What the fuck is this? Top Gun?
Exactly, yeah. Hey, Goose, fuck off, Maverick. You know, it's just, oh, yeah, I'll set you up with that one. Okay. It's like your whole focus is to go out and conquer. And it's, look, I'm not saying that some guys can't live a good life doing that, but I find that hunting is more of a solitary thing, and it's easier being alone doing it than going out with my friends, because I want to have a laugh with my friends when I go out. Don't want to chat to some
in most cases, it happens when you're not trying to make it happen anyway. But I find that whole concept particularly funny because, you know, I'll tell you, when it comes to who I would select for friends, PUAs would be the last choice on earth. I mean, would you seriously want to bring a PUA around a woman you were interested in? Wingman or not.
God,
these guys are gynocentric puppy dogs trying to lap up any bit of smegma they can get their hands on. And you want to bring that?
Like the way they talk about things like a phone close and a kiss close, like it's a huge achievement. I mean, Jesus Christ. Snogging a girl. You want a fucking medal for snogging a girl? Come on. Get the fuck out of here.
Man, this is more and more starting to resemble the conversation you might hear in a locker room full of 12-year-olds.
That's it. But then you see, that's, you know, there's something delayed about the sexualization of men, perhaps. I don't know. Because this is exactly that. It's like, oh, you know, you've got a kiss. You know, great, well done. A banana, you know. Although, you know, as far as peacocking goes, there is one thing that just one little thing is just wear a decent pair of shoes. That's all I suggest on that. You don't have to go mad. Just a decent pair of shoes goes a long way.
Yeah, a decent pair of shoes, a bath helps. All kinds of things that you can do to attract women, other than my God, buy a fucking book on how to get laid. It's demeaning yourself to do that. And that's one of the things I want to say. I know it's probably not popular with some, but you've got to have some sort of wonky self-image thing going to even belong to a PUA forum to begin with. I mean, unless you're a marketer, entrepreneurs are doing well with this shit. But if you're there to learn how to get laid, if you feel like you're going to go online to learn how to get laid or learn how to be successful with women, self-image issues there big time. And the thing is, the sad part is that they're solvable, just not in that direction.
It's so expensive too.
Oh my God.
So expensive. And it is. It's like timeshare or Scientology or a cult. Because you have to keep on paying. And it's like, to anyone thinking of going on a PUA boot camp that's going to cost $2,000 or $3,000, go on a holiday somewhere instead. You know, if you're in Europe, go to Ibiza. If you're in Australia, go to the Gold Coast. If you're in America, Don't go to Portland. I don't know where you'd go in America. Go to Los Angeles or something.
Fuck it, go to Vegas and go to Vegas and get yourself $1,000 hooker and call it a day.
Yeah, Marilyn Monroe. Hey presto.
Are guys really paying? I may be behind the times here. Are guys really paying that much money to go to PUA boot camps?
Well, I had one up earlier this morning, and it was one of those web pages where it was like really, really long, explaining all the benefits, and eventually you get to the bottom, and it was £3,000. So
£3,000, so like five grand American.
Yeah. That would shit. I don't know. That's a lot of dollars, isn't it?
Man, that's insane.
4,000 or 5,000. No,
guys,
come on, Paul. It's a 7-day boot camp. Well, for £3,000, you could fucking. I mean, Jesus, you could fly to Thailand and stay there a month.
No shit.
I mean, the things you could do with that money. I'm not even going to go down the path of saying spend it on therapy, but I mean, you could get a shitload of therapy for that, but you might not need it. You might just need a bit more experience in life. And going to some crusty room full of, people that maybe are a bit wonky on the Asperger's about the presenters there, go out and just have fun. Think of something you want to do and just go and bloody do it.
Paul, I think you and I are in the wrong business, man.
I know. I saw that figure, and I shit you not, I thought, fuck, man, I've got to put my rates up.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm telling you, man. I tell you, it's that all I have to do is pesky fucking values keep getting in my way.
That's right. No, I wish I could just think that ethics was a place next to Suffolk.
Unfortunately, some people actually live what they talk. But my God, £3,000. Guys, listen. If you're one of those guys, if you happen to stumble on this conversation 6 months after it happens, a year, 2 years, as long as it's on YouTube, and you stumble on that and you're contemplating spending £3,000 on going to a PUA boot camp, please don't do anything else. Like you said, take a vacation, go to Bangkok for 2 weeks, for fuck's sake. Just wrap that rascal while you're there. But goddamn, £3,000 for a guy to spiel bullshit about how to be indifferent to women. You can learn to be indifferent without that money.
Even if it was $200, it's too much in my book. It's just a complete waste of money. It is. And that shows you the mentality, the way they get in these guys' heads, that this is the way that you'll achieve success. So they spend the money on it. It's a rip-off, and I bet that it's like a happy clappy rah-rah session, and you'll have an immediate rush, a little sugar hit, and then before 2 weeks are up, life will be back to fucking normal because you haven't fixed yourself.
Guys, no matter where you go, there you are. You never get away from that. Fix yourself. It's free. Doesn't cost you anything to fix yourself. You might consider some short-term counseling at some point, but literally everything that a man needs to do to take care of himself is at his disposal at any time he chooses to walk that path. And if you think that you're going to find something to complete yourself for 3,000 fucking pounds, man, if that were true, I would be there. But it's not.
Sure,
it's bullshit.
We could put the link. We could put the link in the low bar. Give them some business.
Yeah. I'd like to give them some business. All right. Good Lord, I'm fine. That's nauseating. It's just nauseating. But you know something? It's a free country, at least in some countries still. It's a free country. You can, and America's famous for being able to put absolute bullshit in a can and slap a label on it with Brad Pitt's face, and it'll sell like hotcakes. That doesn't mean you're not buying a can full of bullshit. And in this case, that's what they're selling.
Absolutely. Complete waste.
Well, see, we have run our hour.
Excellent.
Anything you want to add before we close out for the night? I think I've sufficiently nauseated myself talking about PUAs that I'm definitely ready for a different topic next week.
I think so. Are we going to do the red flag thing? Maybe the little warning signs. Yeah.
Oh yeah, let's do that. Instead of talking about how to get women, let's talk a little bit about how to screen the ones out that'll ruin your fucking life. How's that for a conversation?
Yeah. Yeah. Teacher. That's a really good way of putting it, Paul. Because all these people they spend so much time and energy getting women when really, in fact, what you should be concentrating on is getting rid of the fucking women that don't fit your life.
Absolutely fucking right. Otherwise, you'll be one of those guys in my email and I get emails all the time from people who woke up to the problems with women when they found a knife in their back. And then they write me asking for help I can't give. Help with the courts, help with the law, help with the reputation and false allegations, the whole thing. I get those emails all the time. Those were guys that had no discrimination about women. And that's exactly what PUAs are teaching young men to walk into. And personally, I think it's one of the most disgusting things going out there for men that there is.
Absolutely.
And with that, I will wish you a good night and tell everybody we will see you next week at the same time. Hopefully we'll start on time. We had some tech issues tonight, but we should have that all resolved and we'll start again at the regular time a week from today.
Good night.
Good night.